Welcome, everybody, to 3324 Podcast's YouTube exclusive recap of the book of Boba Fett, a 7-episode season 1, at least we think so far right now, series from Disney Plus. And this is a special bonus eighth episode where Erik and I'm Dean Leggiero, and Erik Kuber is here. And then we've got, of course, Sean Grady with us as well. And Nick Leshi. We've got this is like the Grand Council, the High Council of Star Wars fans here. We've gotten together for this. If you haven't checked out our podcast, we've got episodes 1 through 7. We did a weekly recap. You can find that at 3324.buzzsprout.com. So we're going to be talking about rolling up the whole thing. Likes, dislikes, thoughts, expectations, right? I think there's a lot to talk about there. So welcome aboard, gentlemen, Nick, Erik, and Sean, and we are going to jump right in. And I think the important place to start is with expectations, because in the season 2 of The Mandalorian, we were treated to a surprise that we really weren't expecting, where the Robert Rodriguez directed episode, when the Mandalorian takes Grogu up to this special area, puts him on the rock, and he was waiting for something to happen, and basically the Dark Troopers come, and Mando is definitely outnumbered, and then Boba Fett appears with Fennec Shand. Everybody went wild. I mean, everybody was crazy for it,
looking for his armor. Yes,
looking for his armor, and seeing Tamura Morrison as Boba Fett once again
was exciting. Yeah,
was exciting.
Agreed.
And Nick, what did you think? What did you think when you saw him in The Mandalorian?
I think he finally got his due. I think the action sequence, he was a badass. I thought that was the Boba Fett that everybody wanted to see. He didn't have his armor, but it was him. And just the action, it made me think, like, when I first started watching The Mandalorian itself, that first episode, I kept saying to myself, man, why didn't they just do like a Boba Fett series? That went through my mind. But Mando has a totally different moral code, right? So it's completely different from Boba Fett. So I was really then excited that they announced that they were going to do the Book of Boba Fett, because then we were going to see more of who this Boba Fett was, because he's different from when he was just a bounty hunter, and that was my expectation.
Yeah.
But seeing him for that first time in The Mandalorian, I was like, this is what everybody had wanted. And that was at least me. That's my impression.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think Robert Rodriguez was perfect to direct that episode, because it was so chock full of action, and the kind of action that he's really known for, that kind of over the top and extreme. And it was a really nice way to reintroduce Fett and really kind of get the jumpstart the character and get him going again, especially in everything he had done in that episode. Once he got the armor, he was shooting the rocket. I mean, he destroyed one of the ships with it. Jumps into his
ships.
Yeah,
one crashed into the other, so he
jumps into his ship, and he's chasing the Dark Troopers. I mean, he really got a lot to do, and then kind of went away, and the story of The Mandalorian continued and really kind of got overshadowed. We kind of forgot about it with the whole Luke Skywalker and Grogu angle for the last episode. Even though Fett was there, it was kind of like, oh, okay, like whatever. And then, Sean, we get a stinger at the end of The Mandalorian, a post-credit sequence, where Boba Fett enters Jabba's palace, and Bib Fortuna is there, and he just dispatches him pretty quickly.
Yeah,
something that the crime lords, I guess, couldn't do with Mos Espa. What did you think then, Sean?
Well, first, I was super psyched to see Boba Fett, number one, in that episode, and like Nick, when they first started The Mandalorian, I immediately thought Boba Fett got done so dirty. I'm looking at The Mandalorian, I'm like, how did he just go down the way? And by the way, I found that out before I saw the movie. For my first spoiler, somebody's like, Boba Fett dies in Return of the Jedi. I was like, oh no. And then the way he died, I was like, and then I'm thinking, with all that armor, how did he end up dead? So when he was back, I was super psyched. And then at the end, when you got that last scene after the credits, and I felt bad for Bib Fortuna, to be honest with you. I had no idea why he was wasting Bib Fortuna, because I'm like, what did Bib Fortuna do to you? But whatever. But I was psyched. I was like, we're gonna get some more Boba Fett, and I was pumped. I was like, all right, cool. And he's got the armor back on. I can't wait. I couldn't wait for more. I was super psyched.
Yeah, Eric, I think the anticipation was high because Jon Favreau was involved, and then they said Robert Rodriguez was going to executive produce and direct. And coming off that episode that Robert Rodriguez directed, it seemed like almost like a natural fit. It's like because Rodriguez is an action director, so it's kind of like, oh, okay, like we're going to get a filmmaker who's going to be directly involved with it and really kind of put the Robert Rodriguez spin on it. And for his stuff like Desperado and his action films, it's over the top action. And we kind of got that in that episode with Fett, with the stormtroopers, and when he's just kind of cracking their skulls open and rolling boulders on them. I mean, he really went to town.
It was brutal. It was brutal.
I remember smiling and laughing through that. I had the biggest smile on my face seeing Fett just kind of do all these different, like he just, as soon as he got the armor on, he's firing rockets. I mean, all the cool stuff we wanted to see Fett do, we kind of got it in that episode. And they really whet the appetite of the fans. Again, especially coming off that season finale of The Mandalorian, where people's minds were just blown.
Yep.
With the emotion was Skywalker and everything, and the story.
Emotion was running high. They I guess they knew what they were doing there to tack on that ending like that, that after credits ending with Boba coming in and just doing his thing was, so yeah, I was pumped. I was ready. I was like, I waited a whole year. I'm like, I want to see this. But I must point out that, like, to you guys' point, they were intending to make a movie of Boba Fett. I think a couple people were involved in that, but it just never came to be. I think
is that going to be part of the solo trilogy? Like the next one
I think Simon Kinberg of X-Men fame, he was slated to direct. I think at one point it was also Mangold. James Mangold was involved. Like he was going to direct a Boba Fett film. Yeah, I mean that and
yeah, because it was also a Yoda film that they were talking. Like they'd started talking about all these like franchises that they were going to be setting up.
Right. This was like when Disney first took over.
Yeah.
And they were talking about like these like independent films, like these solo
Star Wars movie every year. It was going to be a feat. Part of the chapters, and then it was going to be the standalones. Right.
Right.
Yeah, definitely taking a Marvel or an MCU approach.
So
they things.
So Favreau. So they come on board and they decide to create a whole new character, which essentially he's Boba Fett. Like he comes on the scene and he's like already from day one, he's been stealing Boba Fett's thunder, just because this is the guy we were expecting to see. Like he's doing all the things that Boba Fett, or we thought he did, as a bounty hunter. He's, when you first meet him, that is, of course, like you pointed out, Nick, his journey is a different one, but this, so it was a little bit perplexing to me at that point in time. Was like, why are they creating a brand new character when we can simply have a Boba Fett show? So I was really excited at the prospect of having an entire series of Boba Fett, and then this is what we got.
Yeah, Sean, do you think? I mean, why? Any idea why you think that would be? Why wouldn't? Because everybody seems to feel the same way. Is why make a Mandalorian show when you've got Boba Fett? That would maybe lead me to believe, Sean, that they never planned on making a Boba Fett series.
I've watched the series twice, and then the last episode 3 times, and this line stuck out. Cad Bane's line: "I've known you a long time, Fett. One thing I can't figure: what's your angle?" Right? Like, what was the purpose? Like, I think that there's always been like, who is Boba Fett? Like, what is he? He's a bounty hunter. Like, and I don't, is Mandalorian like and Boba Fett not? They have the same armor, but he's not a Mandalorian.
No,
he's a clone.
We don't. Yeah,
we don't know. Right.
He definitely doesn't believe in
he's not in the same
morality
code.
and
the creed does not take
right?
the creed or
doesn't
the
follow
oath.
that at all.
And
he takes off his helmet all the time.
It was odd that the Mandalorian looked like Boba Fett to me. Like immediately, if you were like a little kid, you'd be like, "This is Boba Fett," or like if you knew anything about stuff, that's the guy.
Right.
So yeah, I immediately started thinking about Boba Fett, and like I said, I'm like, how could Boba Fett went out the way he went? Like, and this guy is a total ass kicker, and he is, So yeah, and Boba Fett, like, is, looked up, researched his origins in Star Wars. They didn't know what they wanted to do with him. He was going to be Darth Vader's brother at one point.
Yeah.
He was all white at one point. He got introduced in a cartoon. He never really had any lines, but he was always the figure I was drawn to as a kid and the character.
Yeah.
But you didn't get much.
Mhm.
I don't know if they like which way do they want to go with this guy. They never really. I don't know.
The
I don't think
mystery.
it was ever planned. I think he just, for some reason, I think people more the adults or the Star Wars fans at the time latched on to this
Yeah.
very, not even a minor character. He's an extremely minor character in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in 2 films, but not really all that much. And maybe that was just that's what made him so like enigmatic, that he was on the trail of Han Solo. Like he knew, like Han Solo, floated away with the garbage, and Boba Fett was like, oh, I'm onto that. I know what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And was able to pursue Han Solo so successfully and capture him whereas no one else could. But he did it with very little screen time. And I think that just made him, just rose him to this legendary level. And then,
Yeah.
like Sean, like you said, he gets tossed off pretty easily in Return of the Jedi, and everybody was kind of like,
It's
okay,
kind of
that
slapstick.
sucked. That sucked.
Yeah.
And I think Lucas regrets it. He because he invented the character as a super commando, I think. And his initial idea was to make him an elite type of stormtrooper.
Yep.
Was I think the original plan.
Yep.
And then it's like, this armor's just too unique and too cool. Let's make him a bounty hunter. But in Lucas's mind, he was just a side villain. He was never meant to be this great character. Like, he was just another bad guy to be killed off instantly, like that. Empire Strikes Back comes out, 3 minutes of screen time, and we know everything we need to know about this character. Like,
Yeah, and like
he's
3
smart,
lines.
he's intuitive, he's a wise ass. Vader's like, no disintegrations, and
I
he's
love
like,
that. Yeah.
he's like, as you wish, like, he's, and like Dean pointed out, the whole, so he's like 2 steps ahead of everybody. He knows what he's doing. He's a great, and the thing that perplexes me about his portrayal in The Mandalorian and in his own show is that they kind of, I don't know if you guys agree, but I think they kind of dumbed him down a little bit. Like, he's kind of a buffoon. Like, he's a little bit, like, he doesn't seem to know what he's doing. And like, everybody's talking for him. Everybody's doing everything for him.
Yep.
And like the scene even in that episode of Mando, he's like, Fennec Shan is telling him what to do, right? Boba, go up and, in the ship and track that ship. And he's like, shouldn't he be telling her what to do, since, you know what I mean? So he's flying up and he sees the Imperial cruiser or whatever in the atmosphere. And he's like, the Empire's back. Like, you couldn't figure that out by taking out 2 phalanxes of stormtroopers. You couldn't.
And chasing
right? I mean, he's like, he
Trooper
takes
and
that to
chasing
say
the
the Empire's back. It's like, he's almost kind of like, where's this sharp-witted guy, this badass that we saw in Empire? And he's kind of like, huh? Like,
well, I guess it's going to lead us at, you raise a lot of good points, and I guess we're going to start going there. We'll get to the plot. We'll start talking about the plot, but I guess the overriding question that Erik poses then, or is Boba Fett really as badass as we thought he was? Right?
Well,
or
that's the question.
Or is it a question of maybe this character was better left unsaid? Right? Sometimes showing stuff isn't as great as what your imagination.
Well, it's all part of, like,
when
you think of legends, you think of, like, sometimes they're exaggerated, maybe.
Like
and
Unforgiven,
when you get to
maybe
meet the
a
real
bit.
character, it's not what you expected, kind of thing. Maybe, I don't know why they need to do that, but they seem to have done that at every turn with this character. That's the thing I think my biggest problem.
I think buffoon is maybe a little harsh. I think
maybe
because I think there were moments that you really saw. He finally got his due, like I said at the beginning, the action, and he is thoughtful. He's kind of, but it's the stage of his life. I think he went through this near-death experience, right, where he should have died. Whether and it was a horrible way for this legend to go, and I think he kind of maybe felt that way too. And he's an older person now, and so I kind of like that exploration of this character. You know, if you wanted to do a prequel of Boba Fett, that's a different story. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to see about how he got to build up that legend, you know, and how much of it is true and how much of it is like kind of him kind of spinning it himself. But now he's old and, you know, he almost died. And I think he's checking his own morality a little bit. But he's not Mando. He doesn't have that moral code. You know, he's a killer,
Right. Well,
you know, and I think that's where he's trying to balance it. His experience with the Tusken Raiders really transformed him just as much as his experience with, you know, the Sarlacc pit. So I love that. I think maybe it didn't get into that characterization as much as they wanted. Maybe they're a little too ambitious and it didn't come through as much, but I think that's what they were going for. And I really like that because he is a shoulder character.
Sean, do you think they painted themselves into a corner by making the Mandalorian first? Because you basically can't have the same show.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're all saying that we got out of the Mandalorian what we would have expected to get out of a Boba Fett show, now they're going to make a Boba Fett show, but you can't do we just got basically a Boba Fett show. So do you think these choices were made as a result of, well, we have to do something different with the character just because we've had 2 seasons of a wildly successful show with basically a clone of Boba Fett?
Well, we got 2 episodes of The Mandalorian in the book of Boba Fett, really.
We did.
One a total episode devoted to the Mandalorian. So maybe you have a point there. Like they had to do something, but then it kind of they crossed the streams anyway, and they blended the 2 stories. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this could have just been almost like an extension of the season a little bit, like because you got so much Mandalorian in this show. Right. That you could end the music. It's like, wait, what am I watching? Am I watching? And you got Grogu. You got Luke back. So, I loved it, but I geeked out on it. I did, but I feel like they blended. The 2 shows they blended. Like what they do on the networks when they blend all their rescue shows and all that. And,
Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Medical.
Exactly. Mos Espa, Fett, Mos Espa. Yeah.
They could have just called it Smuggler's Blues and done with it. Just made a whole show of it. So Eric, let's start talking about the plot. Let's kind of get into the show. Because now that we've got all the episodes in the can, it's easy to take an overview. It's easier to take a 50,000 foot glance at everything now, as opposed to each week we were trying to figure out. We were trying to second guess perhaps what was going to happen based on information we got. And I think it's very easy to say that it was not a series that went as predicted, and it was not a series where you could predict what the next episode would be. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's frustrating for any of you, Nick, Sean, or Eric, or did you find that refreshing that there was just something totally different in a show where you're expecting something about Boba Fett, but then you get these episodes that totally veer off?
Well, I think I pointed out in one of the episodes that it should have been the reverse. And it occurred to me now that this show is all said and done that this show, in my mind, should have been the season 2 premiere of Mando. If you think about it, Cad Bane, because of this show, I'm not Cad Bane, but Cobb Vanth to me he's a cool character, but he's kind of irrelevant. It's like they're taking that one extra step when Mando simply could have shown up to Tatooine looking for one of his kind. Like John Leguizamo, like the alien that he played, he's like, "Oh, you go to Tatooine." He's like, "I was there. There is no Mandalorians on Tatooine. Well, go here." It could have been Mos Espa. He could have not gone there. Boba could have already been established as daimyo, and in one episode, they could have. This entire show could have been done in one episode. All the flashback, like the episode with Mando, all that stuff with the armor, giving him the backstory of the Darksaber, Bo-Katan. In 20 minutes, that was more engaging, far more engaging for learning about the Night of 1,000 Tears and all the TIE fighters coming in, destroying Mandalore. They could have done the exact same thing in the first episode of season 2 of Mando with Boba Fett telling him, I was left to die on the sands of Tatooine and I survived the Sarlacc and the Tuskens took me in. and maybe even have like a couple of flashbacks of Django, and where Tamara Morrison could have played another character. You could have brought him back and had, instead of bringing Luke into this thing, you de-age him a little bit, so there's like a dual role for him there.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more of that flashback, because I still don't know anything about his father. They didn't touch upon that at all in this show, which was disappointing to me. I was hoping for more of that.
I thought they would, because some of the flashbacks when he was a kid watching his dad take off, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they never followed up on that scene. They kept showing him running by the window, and
I think they did follow up on it. What it was is once Boba Fett went into the desert and interacted with that tree and and then broke out, that was him kind of shedding the past and shedding all those fears, and because now he belongs to a tribe. And then you notice that flashback of him as a kid went away. Like that whole thing kind of, I think it was supposed to be symbolic that
I get the point that his father abandoned him, meaning that his father died. I don't think his father initially left him behind, in a sense, like, because he wouldn't have asked for an unaltered clone to begin with as a son if he's just going to up and leave him, so I know that scene meant that, because he died, it was a form of abandonment, but I would have liked to have seen more of that. I would have liked to have been played up on, his father, and especially the stuff with Cad Bane when he brings up Django and he's like, first of all, how do you know Boba Fett, Cad Bane? For people who don't know the character, like, how do you know this history that they've had? We've never seen that story. So that kind of stuff, was just kind of, I don't know. It just felt, I just felt like it easily could have been done in one episode of Mando, where Boba and him, the scene where they're coming together and you buy into all this, this Mandalorian stuff. He goes, I do. I believe in the creed. And Mando could have asked him, why don't you come with me? And he's like, no, these people need me. There was the perfect opportunity for Boba to say, these people need me, instead of that biker chick, that the mod girl saying it. It could have been Boba saying it, There's just so many like missed opportunities here that I felt, because it took 3 episodes to tell all that backstory when they could have easily done it in 10, 15 minutes. It's the economy of the storytelling.
Sean, you think too much flashbacks kind of hamstrung this a little bit, or did you mind having 2 stories kind of being told? They ended up I thought they were going to converge at some point, but they never really ended up converging.
No,
for the most part.
I think if they had converged into something, but the Tuskens, they're killed. That's it. I thought maybe there are some of them left. They all got wiped out. Yeah, they're gone. I think I agree with Eric. I think you could have economized a little bit on the backstory, because then after that you got an episode of The Mandalorian. So it's like, what's going on? Like, there's a lot of I wanted to see more. I would like to see in like the journey, forward as well.
Yeah, especially when I think I said it in one of the beginning episodes. I think I may have said it in episode 1, Nick, and maybe you feel the same way. Is I said, oh well, he's spending so much time with the Tuskens that they're going to come in at the end. Like they're going to be the ones. They're going to be the ones that swoop in, right? And Nick, did you feel that way too? Because it seemed like they were. It was so much time spent with them that it was like, okay, they're going to be an integral part of the story at some point.
Yeah,
beyond him.
Did they maybe not all get killed? I thought, but they did bring it back and wrap it up, because that's how he killed Bane, right? It was using the stuff he learned with the Raiders rather than his typical, bounty hunter fighting skills. And I thought that was really satisfying to me. Now there's talk, did he really kill him or not? But to me, it was like
nobody dies in these shows.
Right. I think, in his mind,
except for the Tuskens.
Yeah, he's still Boba Fett is still a killer, and he used what he learned with the Raiders, the Tuskens, to do the deed. And I thought that was a nice little coda at the end, right?
But
I hate
agree.
I hate flashbacks. I hate non-linear storytelling can become a real bad trope, and it doesn't flow the story properly.
They really beat you over the head with it, because as soon as you saw him in the back to tank, you knew what was coming. You knew it was going to go. You knew it was going to a flashback. So it was a little heavy-handed, a little ham-fisted.
But if you're going to use that trope, then show him with his dad, show him with Darth Vader, show him, you know,
Thank you.
some of the stuff, you know, instead of, it just felt like you were, okay, now he's learning. Now he's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's like return to the Dune Sea.
yeah,
like
it was a little
every
overkill,
episode.
you know, with that.
Show us that relationship he had with Cad Bane. It's like a little bit of that because he was supposed to be his mentor, like, and things go sour. But you know,
Nick, you might be onto something. It would have been, and that would address maybe Sean's issue too. Is if you did flashbacks, but each flashback was a different aspect. So one flashback was time with the Tuskens, and you know, he learns and he leaves, and then another time, you know, and maybe you could have done it in sequential order where the Tusken flashback was the last one because that would be the most recent one. Yeah, I mean, another red herring, the Nicto Bikers, right? And you know, they pretty much were set up in the very first episode. They're marauding the homesteads. They're tagging things. Boba Fett goes to the bar and kicks the crap out of a bunch of them. Then he ends up just blasting them to hell in revenge that turned out to not even be the people that did it, right? So, you know, kind of a lot of things that they kind of set up and made you think, okay, this is where the story is going. And then they kind of just got thrown away, which is kind of, again, it leads you to believe, well, what was the point of all that when we just needed to know that Fett was changing and learning and didn't want to do what he was going to do anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing with the Rancor, another red herring, right? They kind of bring the Rancor keeper in and it kind of looks, you know, Danny Trejo looks like he's got something on his mind. Like you don't bring a big actor like that in for like a 2-minute role. And especially if he's going to be he's supposed to be the Rancor keeper. So you think, and Eric was onto that. He's like, oh, he's going to do something.
Yeah,
this
is Machete we're talking about.
Yeah.
Machete, you know, this is, you don't cast him as a nice guy. You know what I mean? Like it's
or a passing through character, right? He just literally passed through and it made you, again, it set the whole Rancor story up. Like, I'm going to learn to ride him and I'm going to do this. And then you never heard, it kind of got discarded again because there's so much other story that they didn't get to tell. So
it was almost like they had their final episode, you know, that which I loved. I loved that last episode. It was epic, the big battle. And all these components had to be set up. So it was almost like those first 6 episodes were setting up all the little components that you were going to see in that final big episode.
Yeah, but Nick, do you think that the things that he learned from the Tuskens you think all of that applied?
I don't think
were actually showcased in that final episode. I don't know about that because, you know, at this point we're taking on that left turn by the 2 episodes with Mando. And when we did get that one shot of Boba Fett standing there, he's not talking. Everybody's talking for him. Everybody's planning for him.
And you hear a lot of people saying you've gotten old.
Where's this leader that, or you know, this,
so without those episodes, though, I don't think you kind of see he is more complex than, you know, it shows. But I see your point. I mean, it's valid. I think pacing was a little off. And
I mean, Sean, if you were hired by Disney and they're going to say, Sean, we want you to write a 7-episode series about the Book of Boba Fett, would you have the balls to write 2 episodes that had absolutely nothing to do with the story? Well, honestly, that's what got me thinking. I'm thinking like someone, you know, you have a 7-episode story arc about Boba Fett, and I don't think I've ever seen it done in a show before, where 2 episodes were totally not only not about the character, but about a character from another series that was wildly popular and basically decided to continue their story. So they didn't even like tie them in really for the most part. The Mandalorian story had very little to do with anything that happened in Boba Fett, except for at the very end when Fennec Shand says, "I'm looking for you."
Yeah.
Right. And then the Skywalker episode, you know, there was some Cad Bane stuff in it, but nothing really to do with, again, what was the point of Grogu having to choose? What was the point of Grogu training? What did that have to do with the last episode?
Well, so he could put the Rancor to sleep.
Well, there you go.
Well, I was thinking
because he saves the day, right? But
there.
that is absolute 100% fan service. That is not, in my mind, it's not good storytelling. You're just giving the fans what they want to see, the little guy. You know, he's got to come in and save the day, and it makes It's Boba. No, Boba Fett needs to save the day. It's his show. Like, why are we bringing in the cute little guy to do this for him? Like,
it's a
I
fair
have
point.
problems with, I just,
I was
it's like the Ewoks and Ewoks and Jedi, like the little teddy bears saving the day. And these, I don't know. They're trying to please, like, I guess, a certain demographic of the fans, because everybody went nuts over this little guy, over the puppet captured the world. This little, 10-inch tall puppet or whatever, just, and so we have to have him in a show about Boba Fett. It has absolutely nothing to do with his story and his journey, and that should have been left for the Mandalorian. It's baffling.
I agree. And Dean, I liked your point in your episode recap about how he was Ubered in to show on the X-Wing.
I love that. I love that.
I laughed at that one too.
Yeah, I mean, so it got even to the point where they just started discarding even plot points from the single episode, right? So if you want to go there, it's like, at the end, Grogu goes through this training. He's conflicted. He doesn't know what he wants to do. Luke senses this. Ahsoka senses that. They put him to a choice, and then the episode goes to black, right? You choose Yoda's lightsaber or you choose the armor.
Yep.
And then the next time we see him, he's getting dropped off like a kid from daycare.
Yeah.
He's getting off the bus.
Doesn't make Luke look good. He's kind of a jerk.
So when you talk,
just sends him on his way. Goodbye.
And I think that's going to lead us into pacing, Nick. Like the way this whole series was paced, it just seemed like it never got traction because of the flashbacks. You never felt comfortable with one story or the other because they never felt like, even though they sloppily tied it up in the end, but you never felt like the pacing was kind of, you didn't know what you were moving towards. Did you feel that way?
I think they were trying to be different from the Mandalorian. I think Mandalorian is kind of episodic adventure. I mean, it does have a thread that carries through the season, but I think they wanted this to be a little bit more serialized and character driven, for good or bad. And I think it felt too like, even though there was like gangster theme stuff in the Mandalorian, I think they really tried to play that up here a little bit. I felt some Godfather-esque kind of moments going on.
Absolutely.
But it didn't always work, but I think that's what they were aiming for. And I'm glad they kind of did that. But on the negative side, it didn't work as well. This is not as good of a series. And you could tell, because then those 2 episodes with the Mandalorian, whether or not they should have been in this series or not, they were the highlights. They were the ones that were like, or all of a sudden you woke up and you're like, okay, even though your head was scratching, you're like, okay, but where's Boba Fett?
Right.
But
Sean, you think too much fan service, or do you think, or too much? There was a lot of call outs. There was a lot of scenes that were reminiscent of another film, or the way they were blocked or staged.
I definitely found myself saying, "Oh, that's a moment. That's like a Godfather moment." There's King Kong.
Does that become distracting at some point? Like when you're playing spot the reference, does that take you out of the series?
I mean, it can. And
I think so.
And I feel like that some of this Star Wars is like, it's starting to become work. Like to try to like, okay, what is that reference? All right, let me go research this. What series do I now? And I look at Clone Wars and I see 133 episodes, and I'm like, oh boy, I want to do this, but I don't know if I have the time. And I want it. It's just like, it's work, and it's like you're not going to get every reference, and it's okay. But some of it I don't mind, but I agree with you. You made an excellent point, Eric, with like, Grogu had to be there to save the day, to put the Rancor to sleep. And I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of absurd. This is the book of Boba Fett, but not really. It's everybody else kind of pitching in and helping Boba Fett. I think that's an excellent.
Yeah, and I think that's the general consensus was. Boba Fett was not even barely a co-star in his own show.
Yeah.
The leisurely pace at which they told the story there was certainly in no rush to build any stakes. I think, the time, Nick, what about the timeline? I mean,
I'm still trying to figure it out.
I think one of the things that confused me or should have been made clear was how much time did he spend with the Tuskens, and when did that end? and because he leaves the Tuskens, but then he's got the events in the Mandalorian, right? He's got the events in Mandalorian season 2 when he shows up to get his armor and he helps Mando. Then he goes and to Jabba's palace and takes and asserts, or takes over the throne. So all that stuff with the Nicto Bikers and the Tuskens and that spice train with them assaulting it. In one of the episodes, he said he spent years with the Tuskens, but we don't. How did you feel about the framing? Like I didn't feel I knew. Well, when did that train incident happen with the Tuskens, where the Pikes decided, or that we're gonna kill all the Tuskens anyway?
And that's the challenge, isn't it? When you're doing this kind of nonlinear storytelling with flashbacks, and you're not sure, because there's sequel movies after this one, and when does it all fit in? So sometimes when they do things like that, I sometimes wish they'd come out with a linear cut, whether it's Lost or, even The Godfather, things like that, when they go back and forth.
Someone will do it.
But then the continuity errors, you're painting yourself into a corner, and then it becomes, you can't really follow along. If it's about the arc of the character and where they're going, and you see them, you're like trying to figure out, okay, did that experience happen yet? Did that moment of learning happen yet? Because it's so convoluted. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I think that was a little overdone.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been told in 1 or 2 episodes. And now it doesn't make any sense to me that he would leave Tatooine at that point to go find his armor, which, by the way, he didn't make any mention whatsoever, except when he got this, the ship back, and he goes to find it then. But he never really made any reference to his armor and how important it was.
Yeah.
I need to get my armor back. That's a priority. It didn't feel that way to me. So why would he leave Tatooine to go find his armor and then to come back to Tatooine when, like I said, this
it was there anyway?
Cobb Vanth, all that stuff with Cobb Vanth could have been eliminated, and it should have been Boba Fett the whole time. And if you want to tell that story about the Krayt Dragon, which again really has no relevance, it's just once again a fan service type episode where you get all this cool stuff that we geeking out about, but it's what relevance does it have to Mando's journey, to all this stuff, when this story could have been told right then and there in one episode, and then Boba Fett could have been fighting the Krayt Dragon. Instead, they create this guy who basically looks like he just stepped off of the set of Deadwood.
Yeah,
turning it into literally a Western.
You make a good point about that, because with the Mandalorian, it's very easy to see that the way it's paced and it's plotted out is Mandalorian had, and it's a classic thing. He had a destination. He had to get Grogu to wherever his people was, but every episode was a side mission, right?
Yeah,
and he would get waylaid. He would get a lead, and he would end up here, and so you kind of I got used to that storytelling of he's getting to the end, but he keeps getting these side missions, people asking him for help, helping the frog lady with the babies. So there, then the episode with the spiders, with in that ice cave, those are all like side distractions working towards what the ultimate goal is to get this child to wherever he belongs. And that was the whole thing. It was all these leads were if you help me with this, I'll tell you where to get this or where to go.
Yeah.
Whereas with Boba Fett, it was just things just kind of happened around him, and there really wasn't a clear vision of what he wanted. He didn't even know what he wanted to do, right? All he knew is he was not going to be a bounty hunter anymore, right? He was sick of working for stupid people. He said it a few times. And I think that's the difference with Mandalorian is you understood that each episode was going to be some type of different side mission type thing, and it would get him just a little bit closer to where he needed to be.
Right. It's like Kane from Kung Fu, like that type of format where there's a story within the story.
Exactly.
In every episode. Yeah.
Exactly. And the with Fett, it was just kind of all over the place, right? A little less focused, I think, with, they kind of had the germ of the idea, but then they took 2 episodes just saying, we're not even going to talk about it.
You can't even call it a character study because he's barely in it. when the stuff hits the fan, like he's not there, he's not present, he's not. You know what I mean? So all that stuff with the flashback, only to give you the last episode, I guess, is what the big payoff is, and I don't know.
It was a great episode.
I don't want to start like tearing apart the Mandalorian now either.
No, I'm never.
But I just feel like if you're going to show Boba Fett some love, at least, I mean, have him show up in one episode, and then you can bring him back. Like you could, and he's there for him. Like he establishes that relationship with Mando. We're brothers, but I don't agree with your creed, but I'm there for you regardless. That could have been that kind of relationship.
He kind of said that in the last episode when they were together.
Yeah.
You're staying. Well, that's a stupid idea, but he goes, but I, it's a good idea or whatever, or I like it or whatever. kind of respecting him,
Yeah.
Sean, do you think? I mean, do you think there was too many loose ends that were left, like not like stuff that was just kind of mentioned and then dropped, like the Rancor scene, or like Chrysanthemum kind of shows up. He's against him, and that's great that Fett let him go. But then he's just like, okay, I'll be on your side. Which again, I didn't mind that turn.
No.
But it just seems like it almost seems like just throwing different things against the wall.
Yeah.
To see what was going to stick.
I mean, there was a bunch of stuff, thrown around, and I think they did their best to try to tie a lot of it together at the end. He learned how to ride the Rancor somehow, and when or how that happened, we don't know. And
that was during episode 5 when we were not with him.
Right. So that's when he was learning, and then you realize that not everybody can ride a Rancor because Mando tries and he gets probably flung off. So that's not something easy to do. So there must have happened, but you don't know how. And I think there's a few things here and there. I would have liked to. I guess the Tuskens are completely gone. I thought they were going to, like you, I thought we might see them come back somehow, some way at the end, but apparently they're all gone. And I don't understand what like the last scene in the last episode after the credits, like why they cut to the sheriff in the back to tank. Like,
it was the biggest non post credit scene
like
ever.
He's not getting his own series, is it?
There's thought that he might be in the.
Hopefully, they don't call it the book of Cobb Vanth. They call it like the graphic novel or short story of Cobb Vanth, because I don't want another book.
And all this, is he dead? Is he not dead? Stuff. Like, I think that's
everybody knew that he wasn't dead. I mean, he took it in the shoulder, so it's kind of like.
No, but I'm talking about the Cad Bane.
Vanth took it in the shoulder, and we knew he wasn't dead, and then to show the mod guy kind of turning around like he's going to work on him, it's like, okay.
And Chrysanthemum, you thought he was dead, and they apparently Wookiee fur is like Beskar because he got shot like
just coming at you
15 times.
Yeah, but he's got layers of like blubber.
I love
but
that.
he was covered with all those Bosk bounty, whatever that that species is, and I'm like, well, I guess he's gone. Nope, there he is. Like he just can't.
He walks in and they're still hanging on him. I thought that was great. He was one of my favorite characters.
I enjoyed it, but I'm like, man, this a lot of shots this guy's taking, and he's still not dead. That's
right.
These must be the most ineffective weapons ever created.
Plus, they were stabbing him, right? And when
he got an axe in the back.
Yeah, when he fought Boba Fett too, he got an axe in the back when he was fighting Boba Fett in his palace. Yeah, he took a couple of bladed weapons then, and then of course the mods had their little like water pistol style, like pew pew blasters, pew pew. So I don't know. All right, let's talk about what we liked. Okay, in every episode of our recap podcast, we did hits and misses, and I'd like to hear, Nick, what did you really love about this? Because it wasn't all bad. I don't want us to say, we're going to shit all over this.
Yeah,
there was a lot of things that were really great about it as well. Mm-hmm. What were a couple of things that you really dug?
I like when Fennec Shand went and assassinated everybody, and. At first, I thought she was going behind Boba Fett's back because I didn't think Boba Fett ordered that hit. And I think, Eric, you might have said that in one of the shorter recap episodes that you think, or maybe he did. And that kind of sets up this whole thing. Because I thought it was him trying to figure out his moral code again. And she's kind of doing. So I thought you're building up that character a little bit. Who she was one of the more undeveloped characters too in this. I
Did we lose
wanted
you,
to know
Nick?
more about her.
I think we lost him.
So I think when she,
I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my computer. I was staying real quiet.
Yeah. No, sometimes it writes itself. So,
can you
all
hear
right,
me now?
We'll revisit that, and we'll have to have a cut. We'll have our first edit here.
Oh, there's Nick.
Nick, are
Can
you
you
back?
There he is.
So I was just saying the assassination attempt when she was going in there and killing everybody, and whether or not that was ordered by Boba Fett or not. Because I think that would be a great dynamic, whether she was kind of doing that behind his back to trying to move him along to a certain way. If you're going to run this kind of mob mentality rule, then you got to do things the hard way. But if he had ordered it, then that's a different story too, because then how moral is he being if he's just saying, I'm not going to do it, but you go ahead and you be my, the bad cop and you do this. But I thought that was a great kick-ass scene, and I love that.
Well, I mean, that goes right back to, though, his moral compass is what's the first thing he did when he got his ship back? He said, I've got scores to settle.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't like all this righteous dude. I mean, he went and wiped out the Nicto Bikers. I mean, for me, I said it, one of my favorite scenes was seeing that ship come up behind those bikers, and you knew it was on as soon as that thing was like small, and then it was just getting larger and larger in the screen, and then he laid into him. Sean, what were some of the stuff that you liked about it?
I like the Sarlacc pit. I like him escaping the Sarlacc and the struggle to get out of that. I thought that was really cool. And like looking around in the darkness and seeing like the other, meals of the Sarlacc, the stormtrooper in there, and then cutting his way out. That was really cool. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing the Rancor. I thought that was pretty cool. Now you got to really see what a Rancor is like in the wild. Like, wow, that's it. But and again, the Rancor skin must also be like Beskar because he took a couple major blasts to the chest and like I said, you don't kill the good guys in any of these series. they just have 9 lives. I liked that a lot. I thought that was cool. Those like parts I geeked out on. But yeah, favorite scene would be the Sarlacc. I like the escape because that's when I always hated the way that Boba Fett died.
Yeah,
and it's like okay, it makes sense that he could survive this. And
it started, and that really started the series off on a like, okay, he's crawling his way out of the sand, and then the Jawas come and they like ransack him and take everything. So it's like, oh, okay,
that's what I was most hopeful, and I was like, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, and then spent the next 3 episodes in white pajamas.
In white pajamas, yeah.
Erik, what was a couple of the highlights for you?
Well, I like that as well, and especially when they revisited that with him going back into the maw, and there's still like the acid from the belly of it. It's still he comes out and he's still burning his skin. It's like you can't stay in there. That it'll kill you. So it's cool that even though he was wearing the armor, that it still penetrated, like it still got in through obviously the crevices or whatever. So he still got burned from it, and so that stuff was cool. The attention to detail there was cool. I did like the biker gang, even though these guys are troublemakers, so he did what he had to do there, but ultimately we find out that they're not the ones. I think his intent in killing them was because they killed the Tuskens, and that's not the case. So, but still, it was still a gratifying
kill
scene to watch, looking at his face when he's like firing the ship's blasters, and and then of course probably my favorite moment is him, which it was expected, but him coming in on the Rancor. That image alone is just so badass, and I got my King Kong moment. So I'm a big King Kong fan. So with the Rancor like tearing everything apart, I thought that was just cool. That's just that's cool. My geek out moments. But
Nick, what about do you have a head scratching moment? Like what was that all about?
I mean, I think it's a more general one. Like, why are we staying on Tatooine so long for all these series? This is Star Wars. Let's go out and venture out to other planets and other, really great scientific ideas. it's just been like, and we're gonna get more of that with the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah,
I feel like-
especially in light of Obi-Wan, which
I
he
mean,
can't leave Tatooine.
for a planet that
Yeah.
Luke thought was just like this backwater place in the universe. It's like this is the center where everything's happening. So, yeah, I think that's been something that's kind of been lingering at me. I'm like, I'd like to see something different besides just sand. This isn't Dune. This is Star Wars, you know. So that's one of my pet peeves so far.
Right, Sean?
I date Jawas. Oh, man. Yeah, and in case you didn't, I'll say it again. I dated a Jawa.
And they're furry.
And they're furry. That bothered me. I thought it was odd.
TMI?
Like, what is that about? That's not even funny. It's weird.
Yeah, Erik will tell you his not a fan of Pelimato.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I've heard
So
that.
Erik, head scratching moment for you?
I think Favreau, just the writing of this thing is perplexing to me. Like the way he laid it out, the way it was, again, the time it took to tell the story, it just didn't do it. I'm baffled by why, when you think back and if you guys ever do get a chance to watch some of the arcs of the Clone Wars in 3 episodes alone, there's this entire story about Mandalore being torn apart in 3 episodes where Darth Maul takes over Mandalore and he's got the dark saber, and there's 3 episodes of 22 minutes each. That's an hour and 6 minutes. And it took 5 episodes of this show to basically show us him riding in on a Rancor. That's not really, honestly, that's really what it's about. Like, and he just decides he wants to stay on Tatooine, and I'm kind of baffled by the introduction of some of the characters in this thing, like the mods. We don't know anything about them.
Yeah, no,
I mean, say no more. But
for me, it was the head scratcher was basically 2 episodes of a show that was kind of just wholesale cut out, and and it's not like they used the 2 episodes to tell a 2-part story. That would be, I could see that as, okay, we're going to take a diversion, we're going to tell, and tie it up, but they actually took 2 episodes and told 2 totally different stories that were unrelated. And it made me think, well, did they run out of gas that quickly? Because they wrote this well before everything happened, right? They wouldn't, so Grogu was a sensation, but I don't think you could hand that into a studio and be like, oh, this is about, George Washington, but we're going to spend 2 episodes about feudal Japan.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
right.
Where's the connection? So for me, that was the head scratcher. Was okay. You because each week we were very tentative. What's going to happen? They're running out of episodes to tie this thing up, and then they just took 2 and wholesale on the back end, no less. When things are ramping up, and then you kind of forgot about what was going on. Because it's not like they even staggered the episodes. Like if they had done a Mandalorian episode, then a couple of Boba Fett's, and then the Luke one, you got 2 episodes in a row where they said, just, don't pay attention to the other story. We're going to show you this because we're basically, but there was plenty of story to tell, which was kind of baffling to me. There was plenty of character development that they could have done with Fett. He could have been conflicted. He could have had moments of rage or violence, and then trying to temper that and trying to, where that's the conflict is, what did he learn from the Tuskens versus what was his nature? And that would have been very interesting. And it didn't have to, maybe there didn't have to be a lot of action, but it would be showing him working through this, where maybe he's subject to flares of anger or temper, and it lets it get the best of him. And then he remembers back to the Tuskens. Maybe that would have been a better way to handle it, is having those issues and then flashing back to what he was learning and trying to remember that and stuff like that. But anyway. So as we wrap up, we gave the series, we gave each episode a grade on the podcast, and so I'd like to see what Sean and Nick and Erik too, overall, what do you, I have a feeling I think we're all gonna give it the same grade, but Sean, what would you think overall? A is what was your grade, and B, would you sit and watch this again?
Okay. Overall grade, I'm gonna give it a B. Because I enjoyed, there are parts of it I enjoyed. I don't. There's times where ask myself, what am I watching? Where is this going? What's the purpose? And why did they do this even at all?
Mhm.
And of course, the 8-year-old me does geek out on some of the fan service. I'm going to fully admit that. I've watched it twice. I watched it as it aired, and then I watched it again in preparation for our discussion. Would I watch it again? My daughters are into Star Wars, and they love Grogu, so I will sit through this again when they're ready and when they want to watch it. But would I willingly do it? Would I revisit it again? Not anytime soon. I think I'm good. Having seen it twice, I think I'm good. I think what I might do is check out a little bit of the Clone Wars. I've already started, but man, is that work? That's work. So there you go.
Nick, the professor. What is your grade?
I think B. I think that's I'm giving it a B, ranking it compared to the whole Star Wars saga. With the original trilogy being an A, A minus if you think about the weakness of some stuff in Return of the Jedi. Mandalorian is an A minus. So this I was leaning maybe B minus. The lowest for episode grades that I gave is maybe like a C plus. So I was a little bit more forgiving with those 2 extra episodes. I know you guys gave it a F and a D plus and all that stuff, but overall I thought this was enjoyable. It's not going to be as rewatchable as The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian I could pop in any episode and just watch it again, and it's just so much fun because they kind of stand alone, right? Each one of those episodes. This one is much more serialized. I don't think you could jump into episode 3 of this one and really get the whole. And I don't think you could sit through all 7 episodes either. I could probably watch episode 5 and 6. I love those. I thought those were great. And that last episode 7, I thought was great. So solid B for me. I thought it was fun. Missed opportunities for sure, but it's not The Mandalorian.
No, fair point.
Erik, what do you think? What are you going to give the whole enchilada?
The whole shebang. I think I'll probably go with I think a C minus for me. Overall, I do like you guys. I enjoyed the geek moments and I did geek out. I loved, like I said, everything that we found out about Mando. I loved, all that story there. I can't wait to see what happens and with that stuff. And so we got new information, I guess. So that kind of, but again, as a Boba Fett show, I just didn't like the way they rolled it out. So yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. I'm going to go right down the middle with a C, right? And it should probably skew less based on my grades, but overall the intent was there, the attempt was there. And actually, when I asked Sean if he would rewatch it, it made me think to myself, what would it take for me to rewatch it? And it would take a season 2 where they tied everything back to this, maybe some other scenes or behind the scenes stuff that was going on at the same time that would make me have to go back and rewatch some of these scenes with the Pikes. Like if there was a deeper story in season 2 with the Pikes, that would make me have to go back and watch like the train scenes with the Tuskens and why, so it's not unfixable. I don't think, but you're going to have to spend a season or half a season if you can kind of reframe some of that stuff where maybe you explain, maybe there's some other flashbacks, heavy-handed the way you do it, but with settling the Rancor thing, and maybe there's a story there. Maybe there was. Maybe Danny Trejo got killed, and maybe there was something that happened there.
Yeah,
and it'd be nice to have some reframing of some of the stories. Then you could rewatch the first season, and be like, oh, okay, well, this is where this happens, and he drops him off, and then we know that Danny Trejo's gonna betray him or do something. I think that would be a clever way to kind of clean this up, because it's kind of it's kind of messy, but it's not. Yeah, it's not unfixable, but I'm going to go with a straight C, because there was a lot I loved. I loved Chrysanthemum. I loved seeing the Trandoshans get ripped apart and just all the different families and stuff. So there's a lot to like there. Yeah. It's just that, they had the ideas, but it befuddled me of how they ran out of ideas to execute those great ideas, right? So they got great ideas, but then they ran out of ideas of what to do with them, which is kind of strange. So,
like I said, I think it just felt like a lack of confidence in what they were planning to do, and they just didn't have enough faith in the character, I think, or something, or the changes that they were making for the character, and it just. I don't understand why they didn't follow
maybe the
through.
series got ordered by Disney, and Jon Favreau said, "Okay, I'll write it," but maybe just didn't have any. Like maybe it wasn't planned.
Could be. I don't know.
Maybe they said, "Let's do a Fett series," or "Can you do a Fett series?" And they're not going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it wasn't intended, or maybe these were discarded Mandalorian story ideas, perhaps. Who knows? That they said, "Okay, well, we were going to go with this angle with that, and we can recycle it here." We don't know, and maybe we'll find out in the future. So.
Do you guys think there'll be a season 2? Did they continue this or no?
Yeah.
You think?
I think they'll. I mean, it's going to depend on Mandalorian season 3, right?
Or are we going to just see him pop up in Mando?
Yeah, because I think they're all. That's where the story's going, right? With the dark saber and who's going to rule Mandalore, and but who knows? I don't know. I'd like to see some more Boba Fett. Be honest with you, I don't know if it'll
cool
be Boba Fett season 2, but I'd like to see more of the character for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be kind of badass to see Boba show up on Mandalore for some, just to help Mando if he's going for the throne, if he's going to be the leader of Mandalore at this point. I don't know if that's going to be the arc or whatever, but it would be
like
cool.
He wants to be particularly.
It would be cool to see Boba Fett by his side, though, helping him out with that.
Those were some neat scenes, right? That was cool stuff in the last episode when you saw them together and they're flying, also the jetpacks, and they're popping off shots and really just expert marksmen. We got like a very little taste of that when we could have had a whole series of that kind of stuff. And maybe that would have worn out its welcome as well. Who knows? It's hard to say. Sean, season 2, Boba Fett, would you be in? Would you be?
I'm in. I mean, I'm not. How could I say no? You're not going to say no. None of us are saying no. We're all in.
We're all in.
Come on, we're in. They've got us.
Absolutely.
I'd say yes. I would say yes, but.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's the never-ending thing about Star Wars, isn't it? You're always
keep giving them second chances.
Just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in.
That's right.
Just when I thought I was back, they released Rise of Skywalker.
But going back to that point that Nick was making about him being do you think it was definitely a Godfather 1 moment? Or Godfather 3 moment where Fennec might have been working on her own, killing these people off, and that Boba wants to go completely legit. And is that going to be a moment where this is going to kind of bite him in the ass and say, they once I'm out, they pull me back in because that obviously will have consequences.
Yeah, I mean that's something I'd like to see explored. To be honest with you,
or did he order that hit to get rid of his enemies? Completely. So
I would find that interesting. Yeah. I like the gangster style of it. I thought that was really fascinating. But get off Tatooine. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, to wrap it up, at the very end, he did make an allusion to that, and he said, "You know what? I don't think maybe I'm not really cut out for this." And then Fennec was like, "Oh, but they need you or something." So he was having that, that kind of leaves the door open for him to say, "Yeah, you know what? I this ain't for me. It's not working or whatever." Or again, maybe his impulses and his urges come back to him. That again, we need something compelling for this character to do besides walk around and take his helmet off. There's got to be something more. So, and we all want more. That's the thing is, nobody's writing him off. Like we still are on his side. We want badass Fett. We want to see him doing the stuff that we imagine or that we saw, or that we saw could happen. Like the Mandalorian opened up the possibilities of what these kind of characters can do.
Yep.
Especially in that scene in the Mandalorian when he was in the bar with the 2 Mandalorians and they have that quick scuffle and he's like, they're both firing the flames at each other and they're kind of tossing around. It's like, that we want to see that kind of stuff. If you're going to call it a Western, then really embrace it. If it's going to be a space Western, really embrace it and bring out all the Western stuff that we want to see, but put it into
Instead
the
of
Star Wars
that
universe.
last scene, Dean, you know what I'm talking about? Chrysanthemum with the fruit. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, chrysanthemum.
They're all like laughing at the oh, you're not going to share chrysanthemum. It's like ha 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 ha. It's like, you know, it's kind of like the
Little
end of
House
Star
on the
Trek,
Prairie.
like the trouble with Tribbles, like the ship flies away and they're laughing. I'm like, you know, don't do it. Don't make him kind. Keep Chrysanthemum angry. So
I think what we really want is a rated R Boba Fett show, because we're forgetting the aspect that this is supposed to be a family show, and it's, you know, you're trying to tell a story about gangsters and bounty hunters and like, you know, violence in the streets and all this
HBO
kind
Max.
of thing. And how, you know, is this for kids really? I mean, you know, that's the thing. It's like how watered down. I mean, you have to.
I never thought they were
draw the line.
I never thought it was.
You know?
I never thought these were family shows, because in the very first episode of The Mandalorian, he cuts a guy in half when he catches him in the door. In the very first episode of the first season of The Mandalorian, when he goes into that bar. So I never thought it was like, oh, this is kiddie. So they're bringing it down, because there's plenty of people get exploded. Like I said, you know, Mach Shai's got hung. That's not kiddie stuff. So I never thought that was the thing. Is like they're trying to. You know, cater to an audience. You know, I just thought, you know, it's just some of the questionable decisions. But that's going to do it for our recap of the Book of Boba Fett. What we think is going to be series 1 or season 1, perhaps. Hopefully, you can let us know in the comments below what you thought of it. Go ahead and please like and subscribe to our channel, because we will have some more YouTube stuff coming your way, some more fun videos. Thank you, of course, Nick, and thank you, Sean, for joining us and bringing some counterpoints to my pretty sharp-ended points that I had, and Erik as well, because we both felt a certain way. But thank you so much for joining us, Nick and Sean. We always appreciate it. And for Erik, this has been Dean, and this has been the Book of Boba Fett Season 1 recap, YouTube version. We also have a podcast. If you're finding us on YouTube for the first time, check out our podcast. We're at 3324.buzzsprout.com. Talk about movies, mostly music, but you will see us again here with some other show recaps. So take care, everybody. Stay safe.